Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Now, you guys know for the most part that I'm main combat rogue, but a lot of you guys still ask me questions about subtlety and assassination. And while those are specs I do not main, those are the specs I like to learn about and hopefully in the future get better at. With the capability of this season and as of recent events, I do have an alt rogue who has the weapons for me to be able to play subtlety and assassination. So with that in mind, I decided I'm going to make some videos to get you guys into the very basics of rogue, be it subtlety or assassination, and this video is on subtlety. Now this video isn't for anyone who is high rated or knows the basics of rogue. This is for somebody who is starting to play rogue, to really get you going, to really get you into the feel of subtlety, for you to understand what it's about, what the spec is all about. So don't expect any high rated play out of this video. The arenas that I did play that are kind of low MMR, partially because I was running with a monk who is all in heirlooms gear, just got himself to level 100, and partially because I haven't done any arenas on this rogue except for the ones shown in the video, so the rating isn't going to be all that high. But this works well for the video because what I'm doing is showcasing you guys the basics. First things first, I want to cover the very basics of subtlety to get you the feel for the spec, so you guys can understand what the spec is all about. Subtlety is a bursty spec, not really a sustained spec when it comes to PvP. While in PvE, subtlety has great damage. In raids, in PvP, subtlety is really all about the burst. You're not really about sustained damage, and you shouldn't be looking for sustained damage when it comes to PvP. As long as you are able to line up on a target and make the burst count and deal as much damage as possible during the burst, that is all that is asked of you. The other thing you need to know is how to CC properly and how to use kidney, but that's really about it. So, as subtlety, remember, you're not about sustain, you're mainly about the burst, so even if you don't have the highest damage in arenas or battlegrounds, as long as you have the damage when it counts, which is the burst, then that's all that's asked of you. Subtlety is all about maintaining one buff and one debuff. The buff is Slice and Dice, which gives you 8 energy per 2 seconds. So maintain Slice and Dice in order to make sure that you're fueled with energy, especially when you burst, and maintain a Rupture or Corrode onto a target because the proc Sanguinary Veins. With Sang Veins you deal 30% more damage to a target. While this might be good in thought process for consistent damage, you really just need the 30% extra damage during the burst. So make sure to maintain Slice and Dice on yourself and a Sang Veins of sort, whether it be through Rupture or Corrode, onto a target you're trying to burst. Potentially, subtlety has burst every 30 seconds. With the use of DFA as a talent, you can burst in your opener, then 30 seconds later you can burst in the Shadow Dance after the stun DRs have worn off, then 30 seconds afterwards you can vanish and use your burst. Again, basically how you would in an opener, 30 seconds afterwards you can use Shadow Dance, so basically subtlety can set up on a target every 30 seconds if you play it properly. So the only thing you need to do outside of that is maintaining your buffs and debuffs. Now I'm going to show you guys some of the arenas that I've done, and I'm going to commentate through them, explaining you exactly what I did and why I did as a subtlety rogue within different PvP situations. This arena has been heavily slowed down just so you guys can see what happened. Since I am playing with a Woundwalker, we decided he's going to start with a stun, so I can open up the Corrode onto the Shaman while keeping the DK sapped, then both of the DK and the Shaman will get stunned. Normally you can open on a Shaman with the Corrode to make sure that Shamanistic Rage doesn't come into effect because Corrode cancels it out. I go in for a DFA in my opener with a Mark for Death Eviscerate and see that the Shaman is low, so I allow myself to play Shadow Dance afterwards in order to get another Corrode into the Shaman, delaying the Shamanistic Rage even further. Afterwards I go in for a quick cheap shot in between. Since the Shaman doesn't have a trinket, we take advantage of the 10% extra damage from cheap shots due to Prey on the Weak and get the Shaman low enough. Basically in the opener we got the Shaman way too low and we decided to stay on him for as long as possible. Because he wasn't able to use Shamanistic Rage due to my Corrode in the opener, basically he wasn't able to pop any cooldowns in order to reduce damage off the bat. As he did trinket the stun, he was already too low in health, so another Corrode to delay Shamanistic Rage and then a cheap shot afterwards basically scored us the win. We didn't need to have high sustained damage, we just need to have burst and CC when it counted, and that's really what subtlety is all about. As long as you can have burst when it counts, you really can avoid just the whole idea of having sustained damage altogether. Here's another example where high amount of burst can basically force cooldowns and win you the game. Here we have a Shaman as enhanced playing as a DPS and a Mistweaver playing as a healer, so this one should be much more difficult for us to face against rather than 2 DPS where the DK can't really do much to peel for the Shaman. In the opener, I'm going to sap the Shaman, and we're going to open up on the healer with the same strategy where the monk is going to stun the healer, and I'm just going to open up with the Garrote and just pump out as much damage in the opener as possible. Because of the fact that we have the monk stunning and me just bursting off the opener, we get a trinket and cocoon forced fairly early on, so then we are far ahead of the competition. I'm going for a Shadow Dance in order to allow ourselves to peel, in order to be able to line up another kill onto the healer. As you can see, the monk has a teleport, but he jumped to the ground. I cheap shot the Shaman to see if he can force some kind of trinket or any kind of CC out of him. He does trinket the cheap shot, hoping to get some initial burst. Knowing that the monk has to teleport, I sacrifice myself running at the monk, so then my monk can intercept the healer as soon as the teleport happens. So in our opener, we accomplished to get a trinket out of the Shaman and the healer. We got a cocoon out of the healer, so this should be an easy ride from here. I go to kidney the Shaman to make sure that Nerf Strike stays on to keep the enemy team down while we have it. I Phantom Knives to get a bunch of combo points because there's all the Shaman pets around us. I get a Slice and Dice up. Now we can actually go for yet another setup onto the healer after the cocoon is down. I'm going for a cheap shot right after the Fist of Fury comes out, and we're able to score a win on the healer using Vanish. All I did in this arena was have high burst when it counted. Outside of that, I just tried to be ahead of the other team, and I tried to keep the enemy team down while they were behind with the off cheap shot and then kidney afterwards onto the Shaman and jumping down onto the monk and forcing the cocoon out early. Now, some of you might be tired of the one-shots in the opener, and some of you might be saying that, hey Dalaran, but what about maintaining Slice and Dice and Rupture? What is the point of all that when you can just one-shot people in the opener? So here's an example of a clip where the one-shot opener at the start doesn't really go our way. The monk in the opener decided just to simply kite away instead of using Cocoon and re-heal himself for the damage that he took. So basically that forced me to get a kidney onto the DK to see if maybe we can force the DK to trinket. We get another setup onto the monk fairly quickly afterwards and try to burst as we can, even though stun DRs are on the monk. And now that the damage basically went out of the window with Cocoon blocking it all I can do now is try to see if I can use Shadow Dance in order to cheap shot the DK to keep him off me and keep the pressure as low as possible, thanks to Nerf Strike, reducing his damage by 50% on a stun. And the whole rest of the time I'm just keeping up a Rupture onto the monk, trying to stay on the monk and touch him with melee, and trying to keep full Slice and Dice on myself. As a Subtlety rogue, the setups allow you to play a little bit more CC heavy, allowing you to CC the enemy DPS while lighting up a kill on the healer. In this crucial moment here, in our last attempt to score a kill, I've prep Vanish cheap shot the DK to reduce his damage and then cheap shot the healer. Since he already has Sang Veins, I get opportunity with cheap shot in order to burst damage into him, going for a DFA, and we score a kill. So basically the whole time I had to juggle maintaining Slice and Dice and Rupture onto my target that I'm trying to kill. I had to basically CC the DK and utilize Shadow Dance in a defensive manner, so I wouldn't have to expel all of my defensives, and utilize Prep Vanish in an offensive manner in order to be able to score the kill and win as the arena. So it's a lot of things to juggle as a Subtlety rogue, and it might seem like a lot of work, but when you realize you're not there to be the damaging class, you're there to burst only when you have the opportunity, it gets a little bit easier to play the spec altogether. The way I like to think about Subtlety and combat rogues exclusively, I think of them as a support class, at least when playing with a double DPS. When playing DPS healer, you can basically PvE down whatever target you have because the healer got you back, so then you don't need to worry as much about CC, but mostly about how do you train this one target you're trying to kill. But when playing double DPS, there's something about playing Subtlety or combat rogue that's just a lot of fun, because you're able to diffuse the situation fairly quickly. Let's say your friendly is getting bursted down, you can peel for them. Let's say you are getting bursted down, you have great defensives to be able to get away from enemies, and you can even kite away, you can CC your way out of the situation. There's just a lot of things you can do as a rogue. You're not quite a Death Knight or a warrior where they don't have that much CC and the resources aren't used defensively, so a lot of your abilities are offensive and all you have is offensive power. To be able to cleave, to be able to stack damage, to be able to burst once it's ready. As a rogue, you just have a lot more capabilities for CC, for peels, you have capabilities for burst, but if you, let's say you miss out on sustained damage, I feel like that's completely fine. If you're able to basically stop the enemy's damage or stop a healer from healing, it doesn't matter how much damage you have. As long as you dealt the damage that was needed, and as long as you threw in CC that was needed when it was needed, I feel like you've done your job. But that's just my thoughts about Rogue. But that's something to get you guys started playing Subtlety. It is a, I would say, Rogue overall is a class that is kind of difficult to grasp the basics of, and Subtlety is a little bit more meticulous of the 3 specs because of the way that just the playstyle is and the way it's just designed. But it's still a lot of fun and it's still really cool. Again, I wouldn't expect yourselves to be the top of the charts when it comes to playing Subtlety. I mean, it's possible against some BGs, but you don't have sustained damage, because a lot of sustained damage comes from multi-strike, which is reduced in PvP by 50%, so that's a PvE mechanic basically. So while you might not have the highest damage altogether or the highest sustain, you shouldn't worry too much about it. As long as you can focus on keeping up Slice and Dice and Rupture up, as long as you know how to burst with Shadow Dance or Vanish and practice it on training dummies multiple times, that's all you really need when it comes to playing some Subtlety Rogue. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully you find these basic guides and tips and tricks helpful. My name is Dalaran. Let me know what you think about the video, and let me know if you want to see an assassination version of this. And I hope you guys have a great day.